Kelly is my name. I celebrated my 35th birthday this year on a summer day when cicadas sounded. I was summoned to the office of the president. Mom, President, what is it? I've decided to hand over the company to your sister. So you're fired as of today, remarked my mother. The president, with her lovely profile, turned toward me as she fannied herself, apparently concerned by the heat. For a moment, I couldn't tell if this was real, because the sunshine coming in through the window was so intense. What? I believe I spoke in an idiotically blank tone. My mother looked at me with annoyance and said, "Did you not hear me? You've been let go. You are no longer needed here. By the end of this month, move out." She closed her fan as she was speaking, returning her attention to the papers on her desk, as though she had completed her task. I listened to her comments gently as I was alone in the president's office, and the sound of cicadas filled the air. "Are you here still?" My mother reprimanded me to return to work. "If you'll excuse me," I muttered as I mechanically retreated, shut the door, and emerged into the corridor. Our business was a modest two-story structure with perhaps 10 workers who were all engaged in demolition. The company was run by a family. My mother held nearly all of the power. She was the president, my aunt and her husband were the vice president, and my mother's cousin and her husband were the managing director. I worked at an accounting firm after high school, but when I was 25, my mother said, "Are you going to leave your family in trouble? We don't have an account. The last to suffer would be you." In a way, she dragged me into the group. Additionally, accounting was not the only task I was given. From secretarial duties to other household tasks, my mother threw everything on me. I was sent out on sales calls when we were short-staffed, so I was effectively a jack of all trades in the organization. In spite of this, I worked diligently from dawn to night in an effort to avoid burdening others, and I somehow completed the work over a 10-year period. Samantha, on the other hand, was 3 years younger than me and was promised the company. She had only been with our organization for 2 years at the age of 32. Samantha frequently complained and changed employment before joining us, stating, "It just doesn't suit me." She moaned, "I can't work for such low pay," as job conditions tightened after her 30th birthday, and she spent her days sitting around the house without even trying to find another job. My mother responded, "There's a suitable job for you, Samantha." At that point, Samantha was thus accepted by my mother as a managing director of our business. Even after 10 years of employment, I continued to be a regular employee. Those around us were taken aback by how differently we sisters were treated, but I reasoned that it was just a coincidence. That's because ever since we were young, my mother has always given preference to my sister. "You're really adorable, Samantha," she said, purchasing everything from toys to clothes for this stunning girl. "You look great with this attire." However, I was told, "This is enough for you," while getting hand-me-downs from cousins and neighboring kids because I wasn't as cute. I didn't understand why I was treated this way when I was younger. Getting my mother's attention was all I desired. I chose to overlook my unchangeable appearance and focus on studying and helping others. My mother, however, didn't seem interested in me. She hardly looked at my report card, which had all as, before stamping it. I even thought about getting plastic surgery if being attractive is the only way to win someone's love. When I was in high school, my aunt saw my predicament and explained to me why my mother had ignored. I was informed that my father had died, but in fact, the year Samantha was born, he had fled with a woman from the company. Compared to my mother, this woman was older and less appealing, and there was something about her that reminded me of myself. My aunt stated, "Your mother has high pride, so she couldn't forgive that her husband was stolen by a woman who looked worse and was older than her." She appeared to smirk, though, as though to say, "Serves her right." In addition, my aunt, who is my mother's sister, resembles me in appearance. Not very attractive, but not unattractive either. Although she caused me pain as well, she was competent at her job, primarily because of her charisma. My mother took over the business from my late grandfather when my father departed when he was 32. She exploited her beauty to draw in new customers and improve performance. Demolition became necessary as more and more buildings reached the end of their useful lives, so she was revered even by my mother's cousin and her husband, and by my aunt and her husband. However, recently, with the rising costs of industrial waste disposal and transportation, the balance between demolition fees and actual expenses has become untenable, a common issue across the industry, and our company's performance has been declining. Honestly, making the monthly payroll has been a close call. During this time, as Samantha started working at the company, I became anxious about how we would cover her salary. Then my mother said, "I'll cut your salary to pay for her. Since we're family, it's only natural." When I logically argued, "Even if you reduce my salary, it won't cover the managing director's pay," she forcefully replied, "It's your job as a veteran to figure it out. Just do it." Tentatively, I murmured, "Shouldn't Samantha start as a regular employee first?" My mother glared at me sharply and snapped, "Who are you speaking to? It's not your place to say." At that time, we lived in the same house, but Samantha didn't contribute a penny, while I paid $1,500 every month. Of course, even after Samantha joined our company, she didn't contribute financially at home. Growing up, I took care of the household chores as my busy mother couldn't, naturally taking on the responsibility. Meanwhile, Samantha acted as if it was only natural and did nothing. "Sis, isn't dinner ready yet?" she would ask. When I was working overtime, Samantha would call to hurry me for dinner. "Hey, I'm at work. Can't you just make something yourself?" I replied, "Oh, what should I make? The kitchen is your domain, right? I don't want to use it without permission and get scolded. You got mad last time, remember?" She brought up a long past incident, ultimately not attempting to cook. Samantha generally doesn't clean up or return things to their places. It seems she still holds a grudge from when I pointed this out once before. Or rather, she uses that as a reason to justify her position of doing nothing. Reluctantly, I would return home to cook dinner only to head back to the office to work overtime afterward. My mother rarely prepared dinner, and on many days, even if there was food ready, she would just eat whatever she wanted instead. Lately, as my mother began taking Samantha out for business more frequently, the need for me to cook dinner decreased. But the costs of these outings continue to trouble us this year. My mother turned 63 and started complaining more about various pains in her body and how heavily drinking affected her. It was during such a time that I was called into the president's office and told, "I'm handing the company over to Samantha, so you, the ugly duckling, are fired as of today." Considering my mother's past action, it made sense that she would hand the presidency over to Samantha. Reflecting on it, Samantha is now 32, the same age my mother was when she first became president. Perhaps my mother thought that Samantha could use her beauty to attract clients, just as she had. However, the idea of being fired because of my appearance was something I simply couldn't accept. Even if my salary were transferred to Samantha, I felt there was hardly any real benefit. When I discussed this with my aunt, it seemed the news of Samantha becoming president had already spread among the employees, but the news of my firing was new to her as well. After pondering for a bit, my aunt said, "Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems Samantha doesn't like it when everyone tells her, 'Don't worry, we'll ask Kelly,' whenever she says she wants to do something. Maybe that's related. But that's because people stopped asking Samantha because her work was sloppy, right?" I said, "Yes," my aunt replied. Samantha was incapable of keeping deadlines, often messed up phone calls, and her work was riddled with typos. Despite having work experience, perhaps because of her good looks, the men around her had covered for her, leaving her unaware of her lack of skills. My aunt understood this point too well. "That's true, but she probably thinks you're in her way," she said, and with a deep sigh, added, "Oh dear, I can't believe she's firing you. That would ruin our company." But her nature of not standing up to my mother prevented any protest from her. I felt a sense of disgust at being related by blood to my mother, my sister, and this unreliable aunt. "So both my mother and my sister dislike me," I said in a dejected tone. My aunt hesitated before replying, "Well, yeah, your mother is hard, but you might be better off working elsewhere. You're too capable to not start over somewhere else." There was a slight warmth of kinship in her eyes as she advised me to resign. Standing in the company, dyed red by the summer twilight, I vaguely watched a mirage in the distance. Maybe it was time to end this. I felt a sense of liberation spreading through my chest. Turning to my aunt, I smiled calmly for the first time since joining the company. Surprised by my smile, my aunt returned it with a sad expression. I spent my remaining days busily preparing handover documents and organizing everything for anyone to understand. Before I knew it, the end of the month, my last day, had arrived. When I went to the president's office at the end of the day, the sound of cicadas was no longer audible. My mother and sister were laughing and chatting joyfully. "That salesman definitely has a thing for you." "Ew, that bald guy?" absolutely no way. They laughed without noticing my presence until I deliberately coughed. Samantha, looking puzzled, asked, "What's up? We don't need dinner today. Today is my last day here. Thank you for everything up to now." "Oh, was that today? I totally forgot." They burst into laughter again. Realizing I would no longer have to see their faces made me feel refreshed. "I'm also moving out of the house, so please take care," I said. I bowed, and my mother replied with a robotic, "Yes. Thank you for your hard work." As I emotionlessly closed the door behind me, I could hear my sister's voice. "Now we won't have to see that annoying face anymore. Watch me," I muttered to myself as I left the company I had worked at for many years. A week later, after finishing paperwork at a school, I checked my smartphone and noticed 14 missed calls from my mother in just 2 hours. A bad feeling washed over me, so I put my phone on silent mode and took care of other errands before heading home. The calls from my mother continued to increase, and by the next morning, they had totaled 80. The last call came just after 2 a.m., of course. I had no intention of calling her back. She was now a stranger to me, and I didn't want to hear her voice, fearing it might make me succumb to her demands again. For 35 years, I had been dominated by my mother. To break free from her control, I decided to ignore her calls completely. Although I could have blocked her, I left the calls unchecked as evidence in case she took any obsessive action. For a while, there were nearly 100 calls a day. At first, checking the missed calls was depressing, but as I got used to it, I began to feel a sense of schadenfreude, imagining my mother struggling without me. It was then I truly realized how terribly she had treated me. A year has passed since then. By that time, the calls from my mother had ceased, and I had no idea what was happening with her. Over the past year, I worked various temp jobs while attending a correspondence course for tax accountants, passing the exam successfully. My prior work experience and the diverse tasks I handled my mother's company and honed my ability to oversee operations, making me valuable in my new position at a major accounting firm. Only now did I start to appreciate the past for having equipped me with these skills. My colleagues at the new workplace were all kind, and we helped each other progress with our work, a stark contrast to the days when everything was dumped on me, and I had to research and work alone until midnight. One day, while visiting a client near my mother's company for work, I passed by the building. The windows and entrance were noticeably dirty, and the houseplants I had taken care of were completely withered. On the way back, I unexpectedly ran into my mother coming out of the company. Upon spotting me, she exclaimed, "Oh," and approached me. Instinctively fearing I would be scolded, I covered my face with my bag, but she came closer with an unexpectedly affectionate voice. "Oh my, where have you been, Kelly?" I felt a wave of disgust and shrank away. "Do you know how many times I called you? Did you change your smartphone?" she asked. It seemed that it never crossed her mind that I was ignoring her calls, because I disliked her after all she had put me through. I was utterly baffled by her way of thinking. Ignoring my stunned expression, she continued, "Oh, but I'm glad I found you. Look at the state of this company. Isn't it terrible? Come back starting tomorrow." "I'm not mad." "What?" I asked, confused. "Like I said, I've forgiven you for leaving a year ago, so please come back to the company tomorrow." It took a moment for me to understand her word. The only thing that must have stayed in her mind was the picture of a young me crying and running back to her. I hesitated before saying, "Mom, I'm already working at another company, and I'm enjoying it there." Suddenly, her face took on a devilish appearance. "What? Despite the fact that our business is in such disarray? Who gives a damn about other businesses?" she shouted. "You are mine." In the middle of the road. "Hold on a second. I take it that you are the one who fired me." "Samantha, what about her? What became of her?" I shot back. She snorted. "Really, I thought Samantha would be more helpful, but she made a mistake by dating 3 clients at once," she added. Everything collapsed in an instant. If she hadn't been caught, everything would have been okay, so she wouldn't be noticed. I put her in the office for a bit, but she's awful at accounting and can't even clean properly. We are unable to pay for another employee. It's quite problematic. She grinned at me after expressing her annoyance and remarked, "That's why it's your turn, Kelly. Since you left, Our workplace has been in disarray. You must accept accountability. I made a complete handover manual and went over everything with Samantha before I resigned. My mother most likely didn't hear that portion, and Samantha most likely didn't check anything. Even if she did, she either acts as though she didn't hear it or doesn't remember. After all, because she was the one who dismissed me, there is no accountability dimension. In addition, a number of clients have stopped doing business with you since you left. Don't you think that's strange? She continued. They claimed that since you were no longer with us, they could no longer trust us. I want you back because of this. I had been employed there for many years, so I knew a number of the customers. Although my mother frequently made fun of my appearance, there were some people who truly valued my ability. I called the persons I owed favors to when I resigned, and they inquired as to why I was going. Although it was challenging to justify the irrational reason for my termination, I did it since I believed it was my last opportunity. These clients apparently opted to quit doing business with my mother's company after learning the reasons behind my termination. They have always used the same strategy. They use force to get things done, assign blame to others, and let someone else handle with the cleanup. They have always operated in this manner. I bit my bottom lip as I recalled the friendly faces of my present coworker, reminding myself that I had been in an unusual setting and that this was the actual everyday reality. I promised myself that I would no longer give in to this pressure. I firmly stated, Mom, whether you were responsible or not, you, the president, were the one who fired me. For an instant, my mother looked astonished, sensing a shift in my tone. In addition, wasn't my lack of beauty the reason I was fired? Before I knew it, a throng had gathered around our disagreement, seemingly drawn by the show. Observing the looks from everyone around her, my mother paused before responding. Did I really say that? Did you hear me incorrectly? No, I clearly heard you. You stated that you were terminating the ugly employee and giving the business to my lovely sister. I was unable to understand your meaning. Despite my 10 years of hard labor, you choose to give the firm to Samantha, who has only been here for 2 years and hardly does her duty. I doubt your judgment. There was a stir in the crowd when I spoke firmly. Really? Is that accurate? That's what her own mother stated. Isn't that absurd? Are they actually related? Some even started filming the event, but I was too furious to give a damn. The accusing looks made my mother's face go white, and she started to perspire. You have a misunderstanding, Kelly, she said. Let's talk about this inside. Did you misunderstand? What's not clear? Why not make that obvious right now if you didn't mention it? I shot back. Everyone around us began whispering as she grew silent. Oh, she has stopped talking. Then it has to be real. Incredulous, many whispered. I can't believe it. My mother suddenly lost her temper. Enough. You're to blame for your melancholy and unattractive appearance, she yelled. Beautiful people should quietly obey ugly people. You're just good at that. The onlookers were startled by her angry remarks and promptly started recording. The video's obvious description read, ugly should obey the beautiful lady. The video became viral very fast. As soon as word got to my mother's business associate, every company stopped doing business with her. It appears that there had been unlawful dumping and book falsification, quite significant offenses, during the year I was away. One by one, the clients cut their connections as the video went viral. The business eventually filed for bankruptcy. Once my mother and Samantha, who are now unemployed, came to my flat, but naturally, I didn't answer the door. They eventually found themselves living in a dilapidated 45-year-old studio apartment without a bathroom, working part-time and temporary jobs, and living in constant terror of creditors. Samantha quickly gained a bad reputation among her coworkers and had to change jobs a lot after attempting to use her beauty to win over her male coworkers for a fast time. My mother, on the other hand, was shunned by her coworkers and forced to work alone and in silence after the video never went down on the internet. In the meantime, I started dating at my new work. Despite his lack of good looks, he is earnest and serious. We intend to get married shortly, and he appreciates my commitment to my career. Since I've always taken my obligations seriously, I live my days with true gratitude.